James Wild.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Mr Efford, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for Lowestoft for securing such an important debate for children and parents across the east of England. And as shown again by the attendance here today, SEND provision is a priority for all of us from across the House. And since my election in 2019, I've visited over 40 of the schools in my constituency and have great admiration for all of those who are working to deliver SEND support to children there. This is a 10th debate on this topic in Parliament already this year, which just reflects the interest to constituents. The Minister is smiling. She will be having many more, I'm sure. I look forward to being here as well. And the challenges that we're facing from increasing demand, from increasing costs, and inconsistent support and outcomes. And that need for change, which you all agree on, is why I welcomed the previous Conservative government's SEND and AP improvement plan and encouraged the government to pursue those reforms, which were developed, and they took far too long to come forward, but they were developed with the sector. And parents, children, local authorities and others are looking forward to hearing, hopefully, some much-needed clarity from the government about their plans and how they will bring forward reform. And as we've heard, demand for SEND services has increased significantly, with over 1.6 million pupils having educational special needs. The Honourable Member for Chelmsford just referred to nearly 5% of pupils in England have an EHCP, with a further 1.2 million identified as having support that is below that level. And across the east of England, the prevalence of SEND varies from the lowest rates in Peterborough, or 11.1%, and highest in my county and county of other honourable members here today of Norfolk of 14.3%. And all local authorities have seen increases in the rates of pupils with EHCPs over the last 5 years. But the size of those increases have varied, with prevalence highest in Norfolk, Cambridgeshire and Bedfordshire. But behind all of those figures are individual children and families, and we heard a powerful speech from the Honourable Member for Thurrock, and my honourable friend from Broxbourne also referred to his own personal experience, and that underlines the need for change. So we know what the challenges are, and in my comments I just want to reflect on 3 areas where change is needed so that we can provide the right support at the right time, in the right place for every child. And firstly, we need a national framework and standards that will address the inconsistency of support. The previous Conservative government's plan set out a blueprint for a unified SEND and AP system driven by new national standards, and the first one we were due to bring forward was particularly around speech and language therapy, given the high demand that there is for that support. We also need to improve the HCP process, because we all know from constituents many parents are battling against the system, the very system that's there to support them. So we had proposals to bring forward standardised and digitised approach to that. That's much needed when less than half of the HCPs were issued within the statutory deadline of 20 weeks. And as the Honourable Member for Lowestoft said, the variation is striking. From that 90% in Bedford is only 43% in Norfolk, and far worse, as she mentioned, in Essex. So can the government confirm whether the plan is to continue with those national standards and also bring forward that standardised approach to EHCP plans and the process? The second area where we need reform is to build the capacity and expertise in mainstream schools and focus on early help. And that means improving training and skills in the SEND workforce, with a particular emphasis on early years and early intervention. And I declare an interest, as I have a number of family members who are teachers, but I think it's very important that teaching is seen as a valued profession. It's spoken as a valued profession by everyone in this House, and ongoing training in SEND and other areas is very important in that, and also in tackling the retention and recruitment problems that we have seen in recent years. Because there's much knowledge and expertise in the system, and we need to share it more effectively. Just a week ago, I was at Fen Rivers Academy in my constituency, which is a specialist SEMH therapeutic school in King's Lynn. And the head teacher there was passionate about sharing the skills that her and her staff, who've turned that school around, have between them and into mainstream settings. And that's a view that was echoed in the recent report by the County Council's network in the LGA about better sharing of expertise and children moving between the settings. And primary SENCOs could also be better supported to help identify support for children, but that does mean they need to have access to the speech therapists and the psychologists in order to do that. So what are the government's plans for better sharing of that expertise and having more provision in the mainstream system? Obviously, mainstream won't be appropriate for everyone, and it's also important that we continue the expansion of places. The Honourable Member for Norwich North referred to new places coming on in her constituency. There are other projects, and the Honourable Member for South West Norfolk is nodding. He's got a special school coming in his constituency, and I think one in Great Yarmouth as well. So there's a lot more provision coming, and we need to continue that. And the third area is around partnership. I'd be happy to.
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way, and I mentioned my declaration as a Hertfordshire County Councillor, which I should have said earlier when I spoke, so I apologise for that. Does he agree? He makes some valid points in his speech. Does he agree with me? And I'll reiterate the point I made earlier. It shouldn't matter where you're born or where you live in the United Kingdom. Councils should receive the same level of funding to be able to provide to every child in the United Kingdom. Those with additional needs, we've sent that extra funding, which will make all the difference to residents across the eastern region.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that intervention. I do agree with him. I'm going to come on to funding very shortly, so I'll address that point then. But the third area is around partnerships and getting education and health groups working together. Currently, the system holds some bodies accountable for things they don't have responsibility for and doesn't hold other bodies accountable for things where they do have that control. So collaboration between key partners is required. And again, the last government's proposals were around creating local SEND and AP partnerships to lead change and to commission provision and to improve accountability with refocused inspections by Ofsted and the CQC. Speech and Language UK, and again the County Councils Network and LGA, have also endorsed those recommendations. So I'd be grateful if the Minister again could confirm how the government plans to pursue the partnership approach and to embed that more properly in the system. And turning to the comments from my honourable friend and other members, obviously funding has been discussed, and I think in the last debate we had here I spoke about the increases there have been in the high needs budget to £10.5 billion this year, a 60% increase from 2020. £2.6 billion was invested into new places and to improve the existing provision.
Would the Shadow Minister give way very briefly?
Briefly, yeah.
I'm very grateful. We've heard today about some of the fantastic work being done by SEND schools in all of our constituencies, and I just wonder if he believes that some form of ring-fence funding with tracked impact measures could help very good SEND schools like 5 Acre Wood in my constituency to further flourish.
Honourable friend makes an interesting point. I think we do need to track the outcomes and the support that children are getting, so that's a thoughtful comment. Interestingly, when I spoke on a panel at the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham last week, it was a representative of the Association of School and College Leaders who said, actually, there is a lot of money in the system, there's enough money in the system, but the problem is there's too much bureaucracy and it's tied up in that bureaucracy. But clearly, demand continues to rise and funding is a challenge, with council expenditure tripling over the last decade. So one area where councils are looking for more clarity is around the statutory override that was put in place by the last government to help authorities deal with deficits, which I think now sit above £3 billion. And only last week, in a letter to the Chancellor, the NASUWT urged the Chancellor to extend the period that local authorities have to address their SEND deficit. So perhaps, again, the Minister will be able to give a bit more clarity on this very pressing issue for local authorities. And the Honourable Member for Norfolk and Waveney referred to the pressures from school transport. In Norfolk alone, that budget is £60 million, of which 80% is used moving pupils with SEN around the county and outside of the county, which is money spent on journeys, not on education. I will briefly touch on the issue of VAT, which has been mentioned, although there is a debate going on in the main chamber on this. It's clear that this is a tax on learning that will disrupt education of children. Reference was made to pupils with EHCPs, but there are 10,000 in the east of England at independent schools with special educational needs who will be hit by these fees, whose education will be disrupted. The government has not even published an impact assessment, even though in the debate earlier the Minister referred to analysis that had been done. It's extraordinary that hasn't been shared with the House. So I hope the Minister, even at this point, will listen to parents, pupils and local authorities and others and delay those plans, and we will have an opportunity very shortly to be able to vote to do exactly that, and I look forward to doing so.
Is he suggesting that it's fair that parents who have children with a special educational need or disability should have to send their children to a private school and pay all of the fees associated with that? Is that really the best solution we can come up with?
No, what I mean is there are children in schools who are going to be hit with a very unfair tax, a 20% charge that their parents are going to have to pay, which it seems to be completely disregarded by the party opposite, which I think is disappointing to say the least. So to conclude, Mr Efford, the last government set out a comprehensive package of reform after a lot of work with the sector, and during the debate here in September, the Minister said the Labour government are determined to fix the SEND system. Hallelujah to that. So hopefully today we'll hear much more about her plans of practical action that is going to be taken rather than talking about the last 14 years. And the Minister also referred on that occasion to the importance of working together. So I will abuse my position to remind her of an invitation that has gone to her and the Education Secretary to join Norfolk MPs and Norfolk County Council, who are coming to Westminster tomorrow, specifically to talk about SEND, a meeting that I helped push for, and I hope that the Minister might be able to come along to that, even briefly, to hear about some of the challenges that we're facing. And ultimately, every member here wants to ensure children and families in their constituency get the support to realise their potential. I look forward to hearing the Minister's comments.